Hello everyone. In today's video, we're going to go over how you can connect your Gavel account with a third-party application. In this case, we're going to use Leadli as an example via the API. Now, the API is a feature that's available on Gavel's enterprise plan. So if you have Pro, Standard, or Lite, you would need to upgrade to access this particular feature. But I'll just show you what it does so you can evaluate if that's the right move for you. Now, in this particular case, the person that I was trying to figure this out for specifically wanted to move away from Zapier. So we're going to be using a tool called Pipedream instead. Now, part of the reason for this is that, Zapier it has 5,000 plus different apps, but sometimes you wouldn't have something like this, like a Leadli. And Leadli is a white label for something called Go High Level. So we don't have that either. So we do need to kind of go through a different process to connect these apps together, even if Gavel is or can be used as an action or a trigger. So we're going to use this kind of combination of Leadli, Gavel, and Pipedream to make this flow work the way this particular person wanted this to work. So in this case, we have the good fortune of having an internal automation feature within Leadli, which allows us to create a Zapier type flow. So we can say something like, when this form is submitted that I created under this section here, which we can say in this case is something like an intake form, which in our case looks like this, where I'm saying when a person fills this out, so let's just do an example of, let's just do client name, and their email can be something like, let's do demo@cormeum.pro. Their phone number can be something like 907-123-123-2345. And then we're going to have the county be something like Valdez. Then we can say submit. Now, what I want to have happen is I want, when I have someone submit that particular form, I want an automation to be directly run to trigger the action of having a workflow completed within Gavel. So you can see that this is today's date at this particular time, and this is the information that we submitted. And in this particular workflow, I also have it set up to where the person who completed this receives their answers via email. So you'll be able to see that this was emailed to them here and their answers have pushed through, and we didn't have to do anything else or click any other buttons in order to have this result. You can also then take the information from that particular workflow and push it into another one like this, for example, where I have another automation using that information from that client intake form. That can be something like the person's will, and I have this person's full name here, client's name, and I put in that particular form submission to have the client's first name be client and their last name be name. So this would obviously be something like demo, or something else, and their county was put here, and then so on and so forth. These ones I didn't automate just for the purposes of just showing that the information pushed through here rather than having this whole thing automated for now. So that's how this can work, is you can have lots of different triggers and actions that will push information through with just a single first initial action that you didn't have to really do anything, because if this is an initial intake form, for example, and you have different things triggered and you're able to take that information and move it around, it just makes it to where this process is completely automated and you can kind of push this information around as you'd like. So now let's go over how this particular one is set up. Now in this scenario, I just chose for the trigger to be that when this form is completed, I want all of these other things to happen. But you can have other triggers as well. For example, in my particular case, the first one that I actually made was to, when I tag a contact with the tag ready for pour over will preparation, then I want this automation to run. So if I take this person and I want to add a tag, so I say add tag, for example, and I choose this one and I say, add tag to contact or whatever else, then I can say add, then that workflow and automation will run again now that that has been added. So if we go back to the data manager now and we go back to that particular workflow that I have it triggered, I can see that now that has run again because that new rule has been completed, and they will receive another email in this particular case with that second one that we just did. So that's how that can work, is that you don't have to have the trigger be that they completed that form. It can be a tag or any of the other options that are here under the automation options. So let's start from the beginning, just now that we know that it works and that it works in multiple different ways depending on which trigger you choose. So if you go over to automation, in this particular case, I have a folder where I have these different ones. And what I've done is I've created a workflow, and I'm going to show you the one that's already built out. So this is the one where I showed you where the form is submitted. So I'm saying when a form is submitted, I want all these things to happen. So this is what the visual workflow builder looks like when you say create workflow. So what you do is you would say add your trigger, and under the trigger you can choose lots of different options. So let's go to here, for example. So you can say birthday reminder, contact change, when a contact's created, and so on and so forth. In this particular case, I just chose to make it to where the trigger is when a form is submitted, and then I chose which one. So you can see all of these different options we have for triggers, but I'm just going to look for form submitted just to show you how to set this up. So in this particular case, I've already built that form out under Sites, Forms, Builder. And then I just said I want there to be a first name and a last name and an email and a phone number and, a county and whatever else. So I made a custom contact field for county. So you can do that as well if you'd like. You just go over to settings and say add field, choose which kind you'd like. In this case, it can be, a single line, and then you just follow the instructions to make it to where you can have county, for example. So now that we have that all set up, and if you go back, if you wanted to create a form like I did, you go to Sites, Forms, Builders, and then just say add form, and then you can build out the one like I had. Now, if we go back to where we were in automation, under our folder and our one that we've already built out and our trigger, then when you say form submitted, you'd be able to add a filter that says that form is, and then choose the form. So in my case, intake form with county, and then you just save the trigger. So that's how that works. So once you've set up that trigger and you know which one you want to use, you would then create an action that would be the action that comes after the trigger rule has been met. So in this particular case, I want you to create a webhook. So you would just say add new action, search for a webhook, and then you would just choose that one here. And then it's just wanting you to put in a URL. And this is where you're going to have Pipedream come in. So Pipedream's over here, and it's similar to Zapier in a lot of different ways, where it's, the same kind of flow of things like actions and triggers. So you just need to create a Pipedream account, and then under projects, you're going to say new project. If you don't already have one that you want to put this under, I'm going to use this one here. And then under here, you can add new folders and workflows. So you want to say new workflow. And when you do, I'm just going to open this one up so you can see what it will look like in the editor once you have it all set up. So under this one, we want our trigger in a new workflow. So I'm just going to do this in a new one. So let's give it a name. I'm just going to call this test demo, and then I'm going to say create workflow, but you can call this anything else. And we're actually going to just choose this one here where it says new HTTP webhook requests. So you just click on that one and then just say save and continue. And that's going to give you this unique URL, which will allow you to trigger your, your workflow here. So you're just going to copy this URL that they give you and drop that into your action here. So once you do, you just say save action. And then once you do that, I want you to say test workflow. So when you say test workflow, it's going to have you choose a contact. So you need to have at least one in there so that can run the test. And then you say run test. So once you do run that test, it's going to give you some events that you can choose from. So it's going to look like this. So you're going to say choose a different event, and you can see all these new ones here. And you're going to choose one, and then it will show you the results, which will be important when we get down to the next step. So in Leadli, that's pretty much what you need to do, is just have whichever trigger that you want to have, which can be, like I said, adding a tag. It can be, the trigger can be a form submitted. It can be anything that you want from the options. And then you just need to have this webhook set up. Make sure you test it and make sure it's saved throughout the process. And then when you're ready to publish it, you would. So from here, we need to do just stuff in Gavel and Pipedream, where in Pipedream, we need to, now that we've had the payload come through, so in this particular case, I didn't actually run the workflow, but you would be able to see that once you do, that you're able to actually see all of the results that I showed you here after you select that event. So once you do see all the different results and you selected the event and you've tested everything, you just say continue, and we're going to go through now and add our action, which is going to be this one here. So the action here is going to be this one that's return HTTP response. And from there, you're going to actually just copy and paste this code that I'm going to kind of show and share with you, which is something that this whole solution is all full credit goes to Ash Singh, who's a brilliant Gavel expert and who walked me through for like over an hour to show me how to do this, just so that we could do this for you guys today. So this is what you want to add, but I'm going to show you a couple places you would need to replace what I have here and where that goes and all that. So in this particular case, a lot of this documentation comes from the help article from Gavel on API documentation. Now from here, you're going to be able to see what you need your authentication to be, and different options and parameters and all the different information that you need. So this is a good one to refer back to. But if you copy and paste this one and then follow the instructions I'll give you to replace some of these things, you'll be good to go. So if we follow through here, I'm going to show you where you need to replace everything. So if you refer back to this documentation here, you'll see that you need to add this path, and this is where this part comes in on this line here. Now you'll use your subdomain or your, in my case, custom subdomain here. So yours might be something like, let's say yours is like cormeum.gavel.io. This comes from your actual account in Gavel. In my case, mine is a custom subdomain, info.cormeum.pro, but yours, like I mentioned, could be something like cormeum.gavel.io or nccu.gavel.io or whatever else. So whatever that is for you, you're going to grab that, and then you're going to add this API path to the end of it, which comes here, and you'd want to have your interview or your workflow or questionnaire, or however you want to word that, that name needs to go in that section. So in my particular case, I created a workflow where I called it test Leadli contact form by Gavel workflow, and you can get the name of it from this section here, and you want it to have all of the different percentages and all that stuff. So I just grabbed that and I dropped that where it needed to go here within this section, and as I mentioned, this section here. So those two parts need to be customized for you, but you would keep the rest of it the same, meaning from this kind of API point to here, and then having new at the end here. So the other part that you would need to update is this API key, because this API key is specific to the one that I made. So the way that you can do that is from your dashboard. You can just come over under settings, API keys, give it a name. In my case, I just said Leadli, which I'll delete this one and make a new one later, but you can just put in Leadli here and then say create a key, and you're going to get a long unique key like this, and you'll be able to use that here. The next thing you're going to need to update is the different variables. So in my case, for example, I have my variables in my workflow as contact first name, contact last name, contact email address, contact phone number, contact county of residence, and so on and so forth for however many and whichever variables you have. So what this looks like in mine, for example, is this, where I have a question that's going to ask what's the client's first name, and this is the variable that I'm referring to in this section here. Now this steps, trigger, event, body, first name, etc. actually comes in Pipedream from the test that you did. So if we go back up to this trigger and we go back to the results, what you'll do is you'll look for the information that you want to map over. So let's say, for example, you want the person's email here to get mapped over to contact's email here. What you'd do is you'd say copy path, and then you would paste that where you want that to go. In this case, this is the path. And you just want to make sure it has, for each one, you have that little comma, because it will throw an error if you don't have it. So that's kind of how you're going to map each of these over. So just go through here, first name, copy path, and you'd go down to the code and you'd find that section that you have that variable, and you'd put that name or that path where it needs to go, in this case here, and just copy paste that throughout until you've completed all of those. Once you're done with that, we're going to go down to the next part of this, which is where we have this section here, which you're going to follow the same process as above, but make sure you have this part here, this $ session ID, and then documents. So you just want to change this part to put out here for your subdomain, and then keep this the same, and then this is the name of the workflow as I showed you before, and then this one's going to be session ID, documents. And so this one's going to get them, and you're going to use the same API key that you created for the above section and replace this one here, and then the rest will be the same. So now that that's all set up, we're going to deploy that, and then just make sure in Leadli that your workflow is published, saved, and then published here. And then you can test your workflow like we did, where now you can try the work, whatever the trigger was. If you used adding a tag, or if you used a form submitted, you'd be able to go through and see all of the different sessions that have been run in Pipedream, and you can also see them as well here in the dashboard. And you go over to the data manager, you can see all of the different ones and sessions that were run, and then from there you're able to push that information around from one workflow into another, making it as seamless and easy as you like, because you were able to, in this particular case, take that information and push it around into other ones like this one, for example. So I hope this was helpful to kind of go through and really break down how you would go about connecting something like Leadli to Gavel using the Gavel API.